Today's Face-Off on Fox Soul. Challengers Quan LX and Big Angry Adams. Ready to go blow by blow on those hot topics. Face-Off on Fox Soul starts right now.
Rapper too. Do you feel like you could say the N-word?
I feel like I can say it, but not because of that, and I'm gonna tell you why. I wish there was some black dudes in here.
There are. Will right there.
And this one right here is not.
Okay, well, we're gonna use him.
Okay, that's my manager. Hey,
Because
Will.
me and Fee know what's up.
Well, you're black. I'm saying.
What the f are you gonna do about it, you know? And then second of all, I grew up loving these motherfuckers. I grew up fighting with them. I grew up eating with them. I grew up doing bad shit with them. I grew up loving with them. You know, I got family. And it's not even about family. Even if I wasn't related to nobody out black, I mean, it was shit. It's what the f I was surrounded by, you know? Like, I respect people that they feel that way. And that's why I try to shut the f up about it.
Right.
But if you're from where I'm from, or anywhere, what the f are you gonna do about it? You know, it's like I don't went to the jungle and earned the lion's head. You know, and I'll dominate anywhere. And
So
I'm not saying
respect-
I'm out here just whooping ass, because I've taken some ass whoopings.
In this round, here's Quan LX.
The question was raised to him. Does he feel it's okay for him to use the N-word? He gave his explanations and reason behind why he felt it was okay. I don't believe Mexican OT is a racist. I believe he loves black people, loves black culture, for he admits he was raised in the culture, raised with the people, and some of his most closest friends and allies are black men and women. And so when he uses the N-word, I feel about it the same way as black rappers using the N-word. I wish that they would not use the N-word, but at the same time, I recognize that the N-word originated against black people to degrade us, devalue us, to make us feel less than human by white society in America and throughout the world. But we took lemons and turned it into lemonade with that word. Do I wish that we continue to use it? No. But Mexican OT is not a racist. He's not using that hard N-I-G-G-E-R. E-R, you with me? He's using the affectionate term of N-I-G-G-A. That man is not a racist. He loves black people. He loves black culture. And I would say I wish he wouldn't use it, but he's not using it to offend, to disrespect, to insult, to degrade black people. It is the complete opposite when he uses that word, because he's using a term out of affection, love, and celebrating the black cultural experiences that he himself is used to.
Well, so I would disagree with at least an initial premise that he just says it using the soft A as opposed to hard ER. You should listen to some of his music. He most certainly does use the hard ER in his music. But I think the question is greater, is more, can Latinos and Latinas or people of color that are not of Afro-Caribbean or African descent use in polite society, or are ever growing impolite society, the hard ER, right? Now, we have gotten to the point where you can see, if you'll go to Fox Faceoff's Instagram, you'll see a great number of people of color very comfortable using racial pejoratives, almost always directed at me. Y'all keep them coming. I find them hilarious. But they're using them typically in a mean-spirited way, and that is acceptable in American society because of this incredible lie that we've perpetuated, which even the founders of critical race theory have said. This Ibrahim Kendi X has said, no, this is not true, that people of color can't be racist because they lack macro empowerment. Of course, people can be racist. Everybody can be racist. So the question, I think, is more not just, is it okay for Mexican OT to say it, but is it okay for other people of color, just not white people, right? And I will tell you, I know a number of African Americans who disagree with the premise. I had a couple of friends get in an argument with a Hispanic friend and an African American friend over the Hispanic friend's use of the word, casual use, right? And when your answer was very Mexican OT specific, right? Like he cares about the culture, he's a part of the culture, so it's okay. But like during my years as a police officer, I was often confronted because, I mean, look at me, big, tall, shaved head white guy. And I started shaving my head as soon as my hairline started receding way too early in life. Thank you for that, God. That I would, on a number of occasions, when we would have disputes in multi-ethnic like apartment complexes where you'd have an Hispanic person having a dispute with an African-American person, I would often hear from Hispanics, I think in an attempt to ingratiate themselves to the white officer, they would use pejorative language about the other person involved in the dispute. And, I've always felt like it was inappropriate. I think there is a lot of racialized animosity in our nation's Latino community directed at African Americans and in the African American community directed at Latinos. And one of the big problems is our society says that kind of racism is okay, which none of it is. So, Quanell, so I see you think it's okay for the Mexican OT to say it. But is it okay for all people of color to say it?
None of what you're saying applies to Mexican OT.
Right, but let's go bigger.
Let me finish. Go bigger. The matter right now is him, OT. Now, let me speak to the broader society. If there is a Mexican brother or sister who raised in Black culture, loves Black culture, and openly admits
that's a lot of qualifiers,
then that's a different person. They're not using it to degrade Black people, to insult Black people, or to try to make us feel less than human. But if you are a Latino person who believe that you are a coconut, brown on the outside and white on the inside, hell no, don't you use the N-word, because we know that you're using it because you have the mindset that you are a probationary white person, even though you're Latino. So no, Mexican OT is not a racist, but to those Latinos who use it because they think they're white, you can F around and find out.
So I mean, we're going to have a committee. We're going to create lists. I mean, here's a real world example. Okay. You know how grown men will ride around in cars, listen to rap music, right? I obviously have some artist friends. I'm not going to name the artist, but one specific artist who not just a friend, but I really enjoy his music. And him and I will ride around in our vehicle or my vehicle or his vehicle, listening to a lot of times his music, banging it. And I self-censor. He is an artist that uses the hard ER a whole lot, right? And when I'm spitting, because my flow is masterful, right? I always self-censor the word. I don't say it. And him and I have had that conversation where he said, man, you can say it. You got to pass, right? And I disagree, right? I don't say the word because I think it's inconsiderate. And what if someone, what if someone who doesn't know Mexican OT, right? Just some 12-year-old kid who's walking down the street, and he's walking down the street too, and he is dropping N-bombs, and he hears him say it, and it hurts his feelings, right?
9 times out of 10, that little 12-year-old boy, if he's raised with Black people in a Black and brown neighborhood,
I'm talking about young black kid.
culture, and he's with some other young Black boys speaking like this, that's a difference, Charles. But I will say this to your rap friend who says you have a pass to say it. Then I say to your rap friend, just make sure that when you feel free to use that pass, using the N-word, use that pass. He should be.
I laughed and said no.
F around and find out that using that word is going to get your hat brought to you. So he can give you that pass. Just make sure his pass covers your ass when you use that word loosely somewhere.
Okay, but see, now you're creating this fictionalized situation. Which one? You're talking tough to a tough guy, but two. Like my immediate response was, yeah, no, I'm not going to do it because I don't think it's appropriate. I would also argue that if we're going to say it's inappropriate, like this is the third rail, all whites should be canceled for saying this word, right? Because that is America's position right now. Why is it okay for you to throw racial pejoratives out about white people in a constant deluge? What do you see as the difference?
Let me say this. You spoke of Black people who can be racist in this country, and then you quoted a white person, perhaps a scholar, maybe, maybe not,
Well,
but
I
some white
quoted
scholars,
Abraham Kendi
but some
X.
white scholars even
He's
agree
black.
that no black person can be a racist. Even some white scholars agree with that, because when you are a racist, now we can be bigoted, we can be prejudiced, prejudging without the facts, but we cannot be racist because we
That's
don't have the
insane.
power
That's
to
insane.
inflict our bigoted mindsets, desires, or beliefs on an entire people using racism to do it. White people are the ones who have that actual power
That's
to take their
insane.
racist ideas and implement it into law, education, politics, government, society. We don't have that power to inflict our racist mindsets and ideas on an entire white race of people.
Yeah, let me ask another question. So if
no
you can
black
use
man
the
or woman
math
has the power
that
to
says
exempt
I
that
can
kind of racism.
holistically condemn white people, right? If you can use that math, like it is okay because I lack macro empowerment. Now, it seems silly because just a moment ago you were saying if I were to use the pass and say the word, then someone would knock my lid off, right? That sounds like other people are empowered and I would be less powered.
That's
right?
not
Like,
power. That's not
yes,
power.
it is. There's
That
macro
is
and
an
micro
act
power,
of
and you are being a
aggression. That is
reductionist to
an act of
justify your
angry
racism.
aggression.
Racism
That
is
an act of
racism.
frustration through aggression. It ain't power. And let's not pretend like a group of black
What,
people.
you think someone that gets beat up doesn't suffer from a power imbalance?
Example of real power. That ain't no power.
But you think someone that gets
tell you what
murdered or
power is.
robbed or shot hasn't suffered from
Power is
someone
when a
that's been
white man
empowered to
named
do
Donald
it?
Trump
How do you
and say
define
he don't
power?
like Iran and he thinks they're doing something, and that white man has the power to drop a 50,000-pound bomb on another sovereign nation that did not attack
at
America?
your ability to get to your pro-radical Islam topics when we're sitting here talking about racism. We're talking about American racism and your belief that you can't be a racist. Quanell, you can be a racist. You are a racist.
You want to see real power? When a white man
I want to
tells
talk
the
about
Attorney
racism.
General of the United States, you don't have to respect any federal ruling that is not in favor of our immigration policy or position. Ignore those rulings. The same white man that will say if the U.S. Supreme Court don't rule in his favor, that they're a rogue court, a runaway court, they're activist judges, ignore them too. That's power. No black.
That's on everything but the substance, right? But the truth is, none of us can use a racial directed at other races, period. And it's not okay just because someone has a pass or some street cred. It's obscene. And everyone of every color can be a despicable racist.
Real power. When you got power up in D.C. to affect the world's economy.
Yes. All white people are rich and empowered and don't have struggles, and all white people were born with a silver spoon up their behind. Sure, Quanell. That sounds racist.
Don't confuse street influence with real power in America.
Of course.
This is America.
Catholic
and the problem is we are not dealing with America's original sin and its disease of hate and racism towards black and brown people and sexism towards women and anti-LGBTQ sentiment. We are not dealing with that. Your colleagues in the Republican Party do not hold each other accountable when it comes to the racism that comes from the party on a consistent basis.
Congressman, I mean, where are you on?
You can't be calm about this. I'm a black man in America. The reason why heart disease.
I'm white. I can't comment.
Listen to what I'm saying. The reason why heart disease and cancer and obesity and diabetes are bigger in the black community is because of the stress we carry from having to deal with being called the N-word directly or indirectly every day. If your colleagues would listen and try to learn and engage and grow and stop.
In this round, here's Charles Big Angry Adams.
That was a former Congressperson Jamal Bowman lecturing a CNN panel on the reason why Black America has significantly higher rates of heart disease and obesity and cancer is because they are hearing from white people the N-word every day. Either they said directly or indirectly. One, there's absolutely still racism out there, right? You have, and it's coming from all directions, but white America you will see social media posts that are soft racism, right? They seem to suggest without saying overtly that certain issues in society are all attributable to Black America, right? Which of course is not true, and it's racist. If the reason they say it softly, clearly, is because you will get banned from social media, you will get banned from traditional media, you will just get banned from American life if you are overt about racial rhetoric, racialized rhetoric directed at Black Americans, right? But that also leads to the absurdity of Bowman's position. I know a lot of white people, I know a lot of Black people, and I don't know any white people that are continually using the N word directed at Black people every single day, right? It doesn't happen. I don't know any Black people that have ever told me an anecdote that wasn't a crazy anecdote. Like, I can remember 6th grade, John Hurt, little white kid, called an African American kid, I think it was Octavius, in my elementary school, the N word. And we were all like, and this is the 80s, right? So this is 6th grade, I was like 82, 83, where you just didn't hear it. I mean, I remember the first time I heard it in my life, it was watching Blazing Saddles. And I asked my dad, hey, and he explained it's an inappropriate word. You just don't say it. It was a historically racist word. And then I didn't hear it again, because you didn't hear it in music in the early mid 80s. You didn't have it inundated everywhere. And I remember this white kid, and we were all horrified, right? And that was in the early 80s. And of course, it has become much more casual. Like, we've had conversations about the use of the word. And in our last segment, you pointed out the soft A versus the hard ER. Famously, a country Western singer was using it a few years back and almost got canceled, but then didn't, because that was the argument, that he was not using it in the hard ER. And maybe I'm just at 53 too old to get the nuance, but I don't believe Jamal Bowman hears it daily in his life. And I don't believe it's responsible for Black America's higher rates of obesity and diabetes and cancer and things. I think some people, white people too, need to have some personal responsibility about their consumption choices, and that greatly impacts how they live. And I'm saying this as a guy that was too skinny and then too fat and had to make some real life changes, and had nothing to do with anything other than me.
I don't personally know former Congressman Jamal Bowman, but I believe that he loves his community and he loves his people. But I could not disagree with my brother more. Our issues with diabetes and heart disease, our issues with high blood pressure and cancer is a direct result of our poor cultural dietary habits. We have still to this day celebrations in the Black community of the slave culture dietary habits. The dietary habits that Black people adopted as Black folk in America were not the rich eating habits of African people of Africa. That's why you don't see African people in Africa with the rates of high blood pressure, heart disease, cancer, and diabetes in Africa like you do in Black African America. So the issue here, Charles, is he was wrong in the context in which he spoke, but white people are a direct result of the historical dietary habits of Black people. They gave us the worst meat to eat for 400 years on the plantation. They gave us the worst scraps, the black-eyed peas. They gave us the pig feet. They gave us the worst part of the pig to eat on the plantation when they didn't eat it themselves. They didn't give us.
There were far more poor white
food
people who ate
during
crap
slavery
too,
to
right?
eat. Our slave masters gave his slaves just enough to survive, but it was the worst food. So our people fell in love with pig feet, fell in love with chitlins, fell in love with oxtails, which is the anus, the real ass anus of a cow, fell in love with hog head cheese, fell in love with bacon, fell in love with these dairy products that are nothing more than death for our people. The most honorable Elijah Muhammad said this. He said the cure for cancer, diabetes, and high blood pressure is your refrigerator. Our dietary habits are the problem with issues of high rates of cancer, diabetes, and other diseases in the Black community. The messenger of God was right when he said, we need to change our dietary habits and we can lower the rates of diseases and infections and ailments that affect the body. If we went back to the cultural dietary habits of our brothers and sisters in Africa, you would not see what we see today. So white people are directly responsible for the root of African Americans' cultural dietary habits that we learned from hundreds of years on the plantation when we were given the worst foods to eat.
Okay, you seem to believe in this history, this kind of imagined history where the overwhelming majority of white people never owned slaves because they didn't, that there weren't tons of poor white people also eating trash. So there's also more poor white people. You always have this fighting, right? People have agency. White people, black people, Latino people, Asian people, they all have agency. They all have the ability to make their own decisions. And something that happened to their great-great-grandfather may have some legacy in their economic opportunity now, right? But it has nothing to do with what decisions they make, whether it is to go to school, whether it is to work hard, whether it is to eat right, period, right? And don't be maligning oxtail, right? Because pig's feet and oxtail
Look at the Black
taste
community.
great.
Look at the Black community. You see more Kentucky Fried Cancers, Mac Devils, Popeye Lies, and Burger Killers in our community like you don't see in any other affluent community. You don't see respectful eating restaurants in the Black community that sell healthy food. It is more expensive. It's more expensive to purchase
It's about
healthy
food choices.
You don't see the